hope your day is being amazing. In our last video, we started talking about suspensions. We've defined them and discussed the challenges associated with them. In this point specifically, we've mentioned that suspensions are inherently unstable, so they require skill in formulation and stability attainment. Generally, acceptable pharmaceutical suspensions have the following criteria. 1 is having a relatively low sedimentation rate, and 2, having good flow properties. These two to ensure that the correct dose can be easily removed from the container, and this is the main point of having a dosage form in the first place. Also, the dispersed phase in pharmaceutical suspensions should be easily redispersed upon gentle shaking. And of course, if any instability problem is there, probably it will be quite obvious and noticed from the appearance of the suspensions, and that can build a barrier for the consumer. Thus, being aesthetically pleasing is also one of the criteria required for pharmaceutical suspensions. Okay, so how would we formulate the suspension to have these criteria? Well, it all lies in understanding what happens within pharmaceutical suspensions, and one of the quite important phenomena to understand here is the electrical properties of the dispersed phase. That's what we are going to illustrate today, and without any more delay, let's start it. Well, upon dispersing drug in the solvent, which is usually water, particles may acquire or get a charge through two means. Either the drug has ionizable functional groups on surface, and the pH of the medium we put the drug in mediates the ionization. For example, if the drug has carboxyl groups, which is acidic groups, it's chemically sound that if the pH of the medium is more toward the basic, the particles would be ionized. Another way by which dispersed particles acquire charge is through absorbing ions on the surface, and this, for example, like ions from electrolytes present in the aqueous dispersion medium. So, in either cases, we end up having ions on the surface of the particle. So, what will happen when dispersing a particle that will impart a positive charge on surface in a solution full of electrolytes, for example? Well, positive ions on surface would attract balancing ions of opposite charge from the bulk of the solution, and these ions will be like fixed or rigid layer of charged material. Within the bulk solution, there will be uniform distribution of anions, which are the negative ions, and cations, which are the positive ions. Near the particle, there will be more of the counter ions, and here in our case, we would have more anions as shown in the diagram. The repulsion of the similar charged ions will result in less concentration of them near the particle. In our case, we would have less cations. This region is a diffused layer of ions balancing the charge on the particle. It is termed the electrical double layer, the first section of which is composed of the ions on the surface of the particle and the counter ions that are tightly attached to them, while the second one is made up of the loosely attracted counter ions. The transition between the first and the second sections of the electrical double layer is termed the stern plane, whereas the one between the diffused layer of ions and the ones that are free within the bulk solution is termed the shear plane. As we've got charges, we've got potential involved. So we have three main potentials at the surface of the particle, which is the nearness potential, at the stern plane, and this is the stern potential, at the shear plane, and this is the zeta potential. And here we have three main scenarios that can happen within this region or area of the suspension to understand this electrical double layer theory and the electrical properties of the dispersed phase in general and how it can affect the formulation and the stability of suspensions. Well, the first one is having the charge on the particle neutralized by the counter ions present in the electrical double layer. And here we would have a zeta potential of 0, or the number of the counter ions in the electrical double layer exceeds the ones on the surface of the particle, and here the zeta potential would exhibit a charge opposite to that of the nearest. In our case, and according to this scenario, the zeta potential would have a negative charge, which is the charge of the counter ions. The third scenario involves a very important ingredient or excipient used in suspensions, which are the surface active agents or surfactants. We will talk about surfactants in the suspension excipients video, but here what we need to know is if the surfactant is charged, then the Stern and the zeta potentials will be affected according to the interaction of the surfactant with the charged particle. Consider having a negatively charged surfactant interacting with our particle here. Of course, the number of the charge on the surface wouldn't be the same, and so as the values of the different potentials. Also, when surfactants are not charged, when adsorbed on the surface of the dispersed drug particles, they might interact via hydrophobic interactions. They would affect the Stern and the zeta potentials as well. Yes, here no charges are involved from the surfactant side, but the groups bearing the charge from the surface of the drug particle, would be affected, and so as the potentials. This has been a very rich video, but for the sake of having the full picture of this important concept, we insisted on having all the materials in one video. Hope you enjoyed it. Next time we get deeper into another concept related to suspensions and can affect its stability drastically. So stay tuned. Here is a recap of what has been said today. You can take a screenshot and look at it later. We would love to hear from you in the comments down below. And till next time, stay fabulous wherever you are.